So there I was, Captain Rex Murphy, sitting in the observation lounge of the luxury starship Cosmic Serenity, watching a bunch of alien diplomats lose their minds over my emergency kit. Not exactly how I'd planned to spend my Tuesday, but hey, at least the coffee was decent. "This is absolutely barbaric," declared Ambassador Glixner, his three eyes rolling in perfect synchronization as he poked at my survival gear with one of his tentacles. The Zilithian looked like someone had crossed an octopus with a politician, which honestly explained a lot about his personality. Primitive adhesive strips? Manual cutting implements? What is this, the Stone Age? Commander Vex, a 7-foot-tall Krillian warrior with skin like granite and an attitude to match, picked up my multi-tool and examined it like it might bite him. Humans still use physical tools. Our molecular reconstruction devices can reshape matter at the atomic level. This is just embarrassing. I took a sip of my coffee and shrugged. Hey, you guys invited me to this diplomatic shindig. I don't go anywhere without my kit. Regulations, you know? Dr. Kimball, the only other human on board, looked like he wanted to crawl under the nearest table. Poor guy had spent his whole career trying to make humans look sophisticated to the galactic community, and here I was with my duct tape and beef jerky, completely ruining his image. Perhaps we could discuss the more advanced aspects of human technology, he suggested weakly. Advanced? Glixnor's laugh sounded like a dolphin having a seizure. They pack compressed plant matter for sustenance and call it trail mix. Our nutrient synthesis pods can create any flavor combination imaginable, perfectly balanced for optimal nutrition. In chemical heating packets, added Vex, holding up one of my heat packs like it was radioactive waste. When our thermal regulation systems can maintain perfect temperature in any environment. Do humans even understand thermodynamics? I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the show. Oh, we understand it just fine. We just prefer our backup plans to actually work when everything else goes to hell. The aliens exchange those looks that beings across the galaxy share when they think they're dealing with a primitive species. You know the look. The same one your teenager gives you when you suggest using a paper map instead of GPS. When has our technology ever failed? Glixner asked, gesturing grandly at the ship's gleaming interior. We have redundant systems for our redundant systems. Quantum processors that can solve problems before they occur. Nano repair bots that fix issues at the molecular level. We have evolved beyond the need for crude material solutions. Famous last words, I muttered into my coffee cup. Dr. Kimball shot me a warning look. What Captain Murphy means is that humans have always valued preparedness and self-reliance. It's cultural, really. Cultural backwardness, corrected Vex. No offense intended, of course. None taken. I've been called worse by my own species. The conversation might have continued, but that's when the lights flickered. Just for a second, but long enough to make everyone pause. In the sudden silence, I heard something that made my survival instincts tingle like a spider sense. The gentle hum of the ship's systems had changed pitch. Ever so slightly, but when you've spent as much time in space as I have, you learn to listen to what your ship is telling you. And right now, the Cosmic Serenity was whispering that something was very, very wrong. Probably just a minor power fluctuation, Dr. Kimball said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. I stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the star field. In the distance, our local star was putting on quite a light show, with solar flares dancing across its surface like cosmic fireworks. Beautiful, really. Also potentially deadly to anyone depending on delicate electronic systems. Hey Glixnor, I said, not turning around. What's your ship's radiation shielding rated for? Our quantum barriers can withstand anything short of a supernova, he replied smugly. Why do you ask? I pointed at the star. Because I think we're about to find out just how good those barriers really are. The solar storm hit us like a cosmic freight train loaded with electromagnetic fury. One moment we were sitting in our comfortable lounge, The next moment, every piece of advanced technology on the ship was having what I can only describe as a very expensive electronic nervous breakdown. The lights went out first, then came back on in a sickly yellow emergency glow. The ship's AI, which had been cheerfully announcing dinner reservations and spa appointments, started speaking in what sounded like machine language mixed with interpretive dance. Then it just stopped. "This is impossible," Glixner announced, his three eyes now wide with panic as he frantically tapped at his personal communicator. "The quantum barrier should have protected us from any electromagnetic interference." "Should have," I agreed, watching Commander Vex trying to get his molecular reconstruction device to stop displaying what looked like abstract art. "But here's the thing about quantum barriers. They're really good at stopping quantum stuff. Solar radiation, though, that's good old-fashioned electromagnetic energy. Kind of like bringing a laser sword to a gunfight." Dr. Kimball was hunched over his tablet, which was now showing nothing but static. "The ship's systems are completely fried. Life support, navigation, communications, everything that depends on quantum processing is offline." "Impossible," Vex repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. "Our nano-repair bots will fix this in minutes." I watched him open a maintenance panel, expecting to see tiny robots swarming out to fix the problem. Instead, we got a small puff of smoke and what looked like electronic confetti. The nanobots, apparently, had become nano-scrap. "Well," I said, standing up and brushing off my hands, "I guess it's a good thing someone packed some primitive backup gear." The aliens watched in stunned silence as I opened my emergency kit and started pulling out supplies. Duct tape, plastic sheeting, a manual air quality meter, water purification tablets, and yes, even some of that barbaric trail mix they'd been mocking. "You cannot be serious," Glixner said, his tentacles writhing with indignation. "You intend to repair a starship with adhesive tape?" "Not repair," I corrected, unrolling some plastic sheeting. "Survive." "Big difference." The ship shuddered as another wave of electromagnetic interference washed over us. Somewhere in the walls, I could hear the concerning sound of atmosphere escaping through what was probably a seal failure. The aliens looked around in growing panic as the reality of their situation began to sink in. "The life support systems are failing," Dr. Kimball announced, checking his manual instruments. "Atmospheric pressure is dropping, and the air recycling system is offline." "How long do we have?" Vex asked, his warrior composure cracking slightly. I did some quick mental math. In a ship this size, with 5 people, maybe 6 hours of breathable air, assuming we can stop the leaks. Less if we panic and start hyperventilating. 6 hours? Glixner's voice rose to a pitch that probably violated several interspecies noise ordinances. "The rescue ships won't even know we're missing for 12 hours. "Then I guess we'd better get comfortable," I said, pulling out my multi-tool. "Because we're going to be here for a while." The ship groaned around us as systems continued to fail. Through the viewport, I could see the solar storm intensifying, which meant our electronic troubles were just getting started. The aliens stared at my small collection of manual tools and basic supplies like they were looking at the answer to the universe's ultimate question. Which, as it turned out, they were. "This is insane," Vex muttered. But I noticed he was watching my every move with the attention of someone who was beginning to realize that insane might be the only thing standing between us and becoming permanent residents of the vacuum of space. "Welcome to Human Survival 101, I said, starting to sort through my supplies. "First lesson, when everything goes wrong, it's not the fanciest tool that saves you. It's the one that actually works." The emergency lighting flickered again, and I could hear the distinct sound of atmosphere whistling through hull breaches. Time to get to work. By day 2, I'd established what I like to call the duct tape dynasty. While the aliens sat around mourning their dead technology like it was some kind of electronic funeral, I was busy turning my emergency kit into a life support system that would make NASA engineers weep with pride. "Explain to me again how adhesive strips can repair atmospheric containment," Glixner demanded, watching me seal another microfracture in the hull with duct tape and plastic sheeting. "It's not rocket science," I replied, smoothing down the tape. "Well, actually, it kind of is. See, your fancy quantum barriers failed because they're designed to stop energy, not matter. But good old-fashioned duct tape, it stops everything. Water, cosmic radiation, bad attitudes. It's like the universe's universal solution." Commander Vex was standing nearby, apparently fascinated despite himself. "But how can such a primitive material maintain structural integrity in the vacuum of space?" "Because it's not trying to be clever," I explained, moving to the next breach. "Your nano-repair bots were programmed to think their way through problems. Duct tape just does its job. It sticks to things and doesn't let go. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one." Dr. Kimball was taking notes on actual paper, having given up on his fried tablet. "The adhesive compound appears to be maintaining its molecular bonds despite the temperature fluctuations and radiation exposure." "Of course it is," I said, rigging up a manual air circulation system using a small battery-powered fan and some copper wire. "You think we'd put it in emergency kits if it fell apart the first time someone looked at it funny?" By day 3, I had the atmosphere stabilized and the air quality back to something approaching breathable. The aliens were beginning to look at my emergency kit with something that might have been respect, if you squinted hard enough. "The manual air quality monitoring system is showing normal oxygen levels," Dr. Kimball reported, checking his instruments. "How is this possible without electronic life support?" "Air moves," I said, adjusting the fan placement. "Heat rises. Pressure equalizes. It's basic physics, not magic. Your ship's life support system was just doing automatically what air does naturally. When the automation failed, we just had to give nature a little help." Glixner was staring at my water rationing system, which consisted of some basic containers and a carefully maintained log of consumption. "This is how you track resource distribution? With marks on paper? Crazy, right? It's almost like humans figured out how to keep track of important stuff before we invented computers." I handed him his daily water ration. "Drink it slow. We've got plenty for now, but waste not, want not." "Where did you learn these techniques?" Vex asked, accepting his own water container with something approaching reverence. "Boy Scouts," I replied, which got me 3 blank stares. "It's a human thing. We teach our kids how to survive in the wilderness using basic tools and common sense. The idea is that if you can make it through a week in the woods with nothing but what you can carry, you can probably handle most emergencies." "You train your children for disaster scenarios?" Glixner asked, sounding horrified. "We train our children to be prepared," I corrected. "There's a difference. Disasters happen. Equipment fails. The question isn't whether you'll face a crisis, it's whether you'll be ready when you do." By day 4, the aliens had stopped complaining about the accommodations and started asking questions about the equipment. Vex was particularly interested in the multi-tool, which I'd been using for everything from electrical repairs to opening food containers. "This device has 17 different functions," he observed, extending and retracting the various implements. "Yet it requires no power source and has no electronic components." 18 functions, I corrected. "You forgot the bottle opener." "The bottle opener?" "Most important tool in any emergency kit. Trust me on this one." The truth was, I was starting to enjoy myself. There's something deeply satisfying about taking an impossible situation and making it work through nothing but human ingenuity and stubbornness. Plus, watching a bunch of supposedly advanced aliens learn to appreciate the beauty of simple, reliable tools was worth the price of admission. "I am beginning to understand," Dr. Kimball said, making another note. "These tools succeed precisely because they are not trying to be sophisticated. They perform single functions extremely well, rather than many functions adequately." "Now you're getting it," I said, settling down for what I designated as rest period. "Complexity is the enemy of reliability." The more moving parts you have, the more things can break. Sometimes the best technology is the technology that doesn't need technology. As I drifted off to sleep, I could hear the aliens quietly discussing the day's lessons. They were learning slowly but surely. Give it another week, and I might have them ready for a camping trip. By day 5, we'd moved from basic survival to what I like to call making the best of a bad situation. The aliens had stopped looking at my emergency supplies like they were medieval torture devices and started treating them like the life-saving equipment they actually were. The food situation was getting interesting. The ship's molecular food synthesizers were about as useful as a chocolate teapot, which left us with my carefully rationed emergency rations, or meals ready to eat, which is military speak for food that won't kill you and might even taste decent if you're hungry enough. "This is supposed to be edible?" Glixner asked, poking at his beef stew with the suspicion of someone who'd never seen food that hadn't been perfectly synthesized. "It's supposed to keep you alive," I corrected, demonstrating how to activate the chemical heater. "Taste is a luxury. Nutrition is a necessity. Besides, after a few days of this stuff, you'll either develop an appreciation for it or lose your sense of taste entirely. Either way, problem solved." Commander Vex was examining his chicken and rice meal like it might contain military secrets. "These chemical heating devices are remarkable. No power source required, yet they generate sufficient thermal energy to properly prepare the food." "Magnesium and iron powder," I explained, setting up my makeshift cooking station using metal containers and heat packs. "Add a little water, and you get an exothermic reaction hot enough to warm your meal. Chemistry in action." Dr. Kimball was taking notes as usual, but now he was writing with obvious enthusiasm rather than academic embarrassment. The simplicity is genius. Rather than trying to synthesize food from base molecules, you preserve complete nutritional packages that can be rehydrated and heated using basic chemical reactions. Exactly. Why reinvent the wheel when you can just pack a better wheel? By day 6, I'd managed to jury rig repairs to some of the ship's essential systems using nothing but basic tools, copper wire, and enough duct tape to mummify a small planet. The aliens watched in fascination as I bypassed fried circuit boards with simple wire connections and created manual overrides for automated systems. "You are essentially performing surgery on our ship's nervous system," Vex observed, watching me splice wires with my multi-tool. "More like first aid," I replied, twisting connections together. "Your ship's brain is fried, but the muscles still work. We just need to give them new instructions the old-fashioned way." "This is incredible," Glixner said, his earlier disdain completely forgotten. "You are making our advanced technology function using tools that predate quantum processing by centuries." "That's because the basic principles haven't changed," I explained, securing the wire connections with electrical tape. Electricity flows through conductors. Mechanical systems respond to manual inputs. Physics is physics, whether you're using quantum processors or copper wire. The breakthrough came on day 7, when I managed to get the ship's basic navigation system working again. Not the fancy autopilot that could thread a needle while calculating hyperspace jumps, but the simple directional indicator that could tell us which way was up. "How did you know which circuits to bypass?" Dr. Kimball asked, genuinely impressed. "Same way you troubleshoot any system," I said, checking my work. "Start with the basics. Power, signal, output. If the fancy stuff is broken, find the simple stuff that still works and build from there." By day 8, we had basic life support, minimal navigation, and what I generously called emergency communications. The aliens were no longer looking at my emergency kit like it was primitive technology. They were looking at it like it was magic. "I must ask," Vex said during our evening meal, "how many of these emergency scenarios have you actually encountered?" "Personally, 3 major ones, not counting this one. But I've studied dozens of others. Every emergency teaches you something new about what really matters when everything goes wrong." "And what is that?" Glixner asked. I gestured at our improvised living space, with its duct-taped repairs, manually regulated systems, and careful rationing of resources. That the most advanced technology in the universe is useless if you can't fix it with what you have on hand. But a roll of duct tape, a multi-tool, and some common sense? That'll get you through just about anything. The aliens nodded solemnly, finally beginning to understand what humans had known for centuries. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one that actually works. By day 9, something remarkable had happened. The aliens had stopped being passengers and started being crew members. They were checking system status, monitoring our improvised repairs, and even suggesting improvements to our survival setup. It was like watching a bunch of college professors discover that shop class actually had something to teach them. The atmospheric recycling system is running at 92% efficiency, Dr. Kimball reported, checking our jury-rigged air purification setup. That's actually better than the original automated system was managing before the storm. Makes sense, I said, adjusting the manual controls. The original system was trying to maintain perfect conditions automatically. Our system just maintains good enough conditions with human oversight. Sometimes good enough is better than perfect. Commander Vex had become particularly fascinated with the concept of redundancy. You have backup systems for your backup systems, he observed, examining our multiple water purification methods, chemical tablets, filtration cloth, and UV sterilization. Rule number 1 of emergency preparedness, I explained. 2 is 1, 1 is none. If something is critical to your survival, you need at least 2 ways to do it, preferably 3. But how do you determine what is critical? Glixner asked, his tentacles wrapped around what had become his favorite tool from my kit, a simple manual can opener. Easy. If you can't live without it for more than 3 days, it's critical. Air, water, food, shelter, in that order. Everything else is nice to have. Day 10 brought our biggest challenge yet. The ship's waste management system had finally given up entirely, which in a closed environment is the kind of problem that can turn deadly fast. The aliens were in full panic mode, but I just opened my emergency manual and started reading. "There is a solution for this in your kit?" Vex asked, sounding desperate. Not a solution, exactly. But there are principles. I started pulling out supplies. Sanitation, separation, and sustainability. We can't fix the automated system, but we can create a manual one that serves the same purpose. What followed was probably the most educational few hours of the aliens' lives, as I walked them through the basics of waste management using nothing but basic chemistry, and some plastic containers, and a lot of common sense. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. "This is remarkable," Dr. Kimball said, making notes. "You have essentially recreated the ship's waste processing system using materials that predate space travel. The principles are the same whether you're on a starship or a camping trip," I replied. "Separate the hazardous from the harmless, process what you can, contain what you can't, and maintain sanitation throughout. And the methods change, but the goals don't." By day 11, I had the aliens building their own tools. Using spare parts cannibalized from dead systems, they were creating manual overrides, backup instruments, and even entertainment devices. Glixner had fashioned a crude but effective musical instrument from some piping and electronic components. Vex had built a chess set from salvaged materials. "I never realized how satisfying it could be to create something with your own hands," Glixner said, tuning his improvised instrument. "That's the difference between manufacturing and making," I explained. "When you manufacture something, you're just following instructions. When you make something, you're solving a problem. Much more satisfying." The real breakthrough came on day 12 when I managed to get our improvised communication system working well enough to send a distress signal. It wasn't much, just a basic SOS in standard galactic code, but it was enough to let any passing ships know we were alive and in need of assistance. "How did you know the correct signal protocols?" Vex asked, watching me tap out the message on our jury-rigged transmitter. "Same way I know everything else in this kit," I said. "I read the manual, cover to cover multiple times. You can't use tools effectively if you don't understand how they work." "You memorized the entire emergency procedures manual?" Dr. Kimball asked, incredulous. "Memorized, practiced, and tested. Knowledge you can't access in an emergency is just trivia. Knowledge you can apply when everything goes wrong? That's survival." As we settled in for what we hoped would be our last night aboard the disabled ship, the aliens had become something I'd never expected, the converts to the Church of Human Preparedness. They were already making plans to acquire their own emergency kits, talking about training programs and discussing the philosophy of simple, reliable solutions. "I have a question," Glixner said as we shared our evening meal. "Why do humans prepare for disasters that may never happen?" I thought about it for a moment. Because the alternative is being unprepared for disasters that definitely will happen. Murphy's Law, you know. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. The question isn't whether you'll face a crisis. The question is whether you'll be ready when you do. "And you are always ready?" Vex asked. I gestured at our improvised but functional living space, with its duct-taped repairs, manually operated systems, and carefully rationed supplies. "I'm ready for the problems I can predict. The rest I'll figure out when they happen." That's what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, and we overcome. Usually with duct tape and a positive attitude. The aliens nodded, finally understanding what it meant to be human in a hostile universe. Not the smartest species, not the most technologically advanced, but absolutely, positively the most prepared for when everything inevitably goes wrong. The rescue ship arrived on day 13 to find something that probably broke several interspecies records, a luxury starship held together with duct tape, operating on jury-rigged systems with 5 survivors who were not only alive but actually seemed to be enjoying themselves. "This is Rescue 1 to disabled vessel," came the voice over our improvised communication system. "We're reading life signs and what appears to be. Is that a card game?" I looked around at our little group. Glixner was dealing another hand of poker with the deck from my emergency kit. Vex was monitoring our atmospheric systems like a seasoned engineer, and Dr. Kimball was writing what looked like a technical manual on emergency repair procedures. We'd gone from a crisis situation to something that looked suspiciously like a very unconventional camping trip. "This is Captain Murphy," I replied into the transmitter. 5 souls aboard, all in good health. We've got life support stable, basic navigation operational, and we're teaching the aliens the finer points of 5-card stud. "Captain Murphy, this is Commander Torres of the Galactic Rescue Service. We're boarding now. What's your status on food, water, and medical supplies?" "Food and water are good for another week if we're careful," I reported. "Medical supplies unused. We've had 0 injuries and surprisingly high morale. Though I should warn you, the Zilithian has gotten pretty good at poker. He's been cleaning us out with those tentacles of his." When the rescue team came aboard, their expressions were priceless. They'd obviously expected to find survivors clinging to life in a barely functional wreck. Instead, they found what looked like a master class in practical engineering, with systems that were crude but effective, and survivors who were better organized than most functioning ships. "How is this possible?" Commander Torres asked, examining my duct tape repairs with obvious bewilderment. "Your ship took a direct hit from a Class 5 solar storm. Every quantum system should be completely fried." "Every quantum system is completely fried," I confirmed. "But quantum systems aren't the only way to make a ship work. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." The rescue team's technical specialist, a Krillian engineer named Zox, was running scans on our improvised systems. "These repairs are incredible. You've essentially rebuilt the ship's core functions using primitive materials and basic engineering principles." "Not primitive," Vex corrected from his position at the atmospheric controls. "Fundamental. There is a significant difference." You have to understand, Glixner added, his tentacles gesturing expansively, we have witnessed something remarkable here. Captain Murphy has demonstrated that true technology is not about complexity or sophistication. It is about reliability and adaptability. Dr. Kimball was showing the rescue team his notes, which had grown into a comprehensive guide to emergency repairs using basic tools. The applications are extraordinary. We could revolutionize emergency response procedures across the galaxy. Commander Torres looked at me with something approaching awe. Captain, how did you know all of this would work? I shrugged, packing up my emergency kit. I didn't, but I knew that doing something was better than doing nothing, and that simple tools used correctly beat complex tools that don't work at all. The rest was just problem solving. This is going to change everything, the rescue team's medic said, examining our improvised medical station. We've been so focused on advanced technology that we've forgotten the basics. When the technology fails, we're helpless. Not helpless, I corrected. Just unprepared. There's a difference, and it's an important one. As we prepared to transfer to the rescue ship, the aliens were already making plans. They wanted to study human emergency procedures, acquire their own basic survival kits, and implement training programs for their crews. The galaxy's most advanced species had just learned that sometimes the most advanced solution is the simplest one that actually works. Captain Murphy, Glixner said as we prepared to leave, I owe you an apology. We mocked your emergency kit as primitive and backwards. And now? Now I realize it is the most advanced piece of technology on this ship. Not because of what it contains, but because of what it represents, the wisdom to prepare for the unexpected and the knowledge to adapt when everything goes wrong. 3 months later, I got a message from the Galactic Federation's Emergency Preparedness Committee. They wanted to hire me as Chief Survival Consultant, with a mandate to develop basic emergency protocols for all member species. The pay was excellent, the benefits were comprehensive, and the job description was basically teach the galaxy how to survive with duct tape and common sense. I accepted, of course. Someone had to show these advanced civilizations that the most sophisticated technology in the universe is a human with a well-stocked emergency kit and a stubborn refusal to give up. Besides, the galaxy needed to learn what we'd known all along. When everything goes wrong, it's not the smartest species that survives or the most technologically advanced. It's the one that came prepared. And humans? We're always prepared. It's what we do.